All right. Sorry, folks. We had some technical difficulties there, so I know we are starting a little bit late. Just allow some folks to come in. So really quickly, I'll do a really quick introduction. As a lot of the participants know and attendees, my name is Pablita Thomas. I'm the interim ED over at the BCH PCA. I want to thank you very, very much for joining today, because I know we have a handful, maybe more than a dozen people that have been attending every session. That is awesome. So I can assume, being the end of the year, everybody's probably zoomed out since the start of COVID. And so I really do appreciate you taking your time the last day of the week during your lunch hour to join us. We have a wonderful panel today during our last day of our fundraising expo. We have Wendy Ennis. She's from Victoria Hospice. Natasha Gerard, she's from Central Okanagan Hospice Association. We have Donna Flood from Prince George Hospice, and we have Amanda McNally from Peace Arch. So the format today is going to be a little bit different. Usually we would ask questions in between each or throughout the session, but given that we have 4 presenters and we want to give adequate time for our presenters and we started late, I'm going to request or ask if everybody can just leave their questions to the end. Please put them through the Q&A toolbar at the bottom in the chat, but I will ask the presenters the questions at the end. So to start off, we are going to start off with Natasha Gerard. She's the ED at the Central Okanagan Hospice Association. The association has been providing compassionate support care and service for over 38 years in the Central Okanagan area by trained volunteers and professionals. Their support is aimed at providing emotional, social, spiritual, and practical supports for individuals living with serious illnesses and at the end of their lives, and for who are also grieving. I'd like to introduce Natasha. And like I said, everybody, please feel free to put in your comments at the bottom. Thank you.
Thank you, Pablita. I'm just going to share my screen. So just to give you a little bit of background from what Pablita had just mentioned, we are located in Kelowna, and our association does not operate end-of-life beds. Our health authority owns and operates the 24 hospice beds here in Kelowna. So we fundraise 92% of our annual budget by way of special events, donations, grants, and endowments. Special events make up 70% of our revenue. So the pandemic has made quite an impact, but we knew we could not stand still. So as you will see on my screen, our motto has been, do not stand still, continue to move forward. Obviously, sustainability was our key focus, and continuing to remain topical in our community's mind and our donors' minds. If we stopped, we knew we were left behind, and experts in the field were promoting this every step of the way. And we had our fundraiser really participate in a lot of workshops and webinars for the first 3 months in the pandemic, to stay informed and to ensure that we were remaining relevant with our fundraising efforts. We launched an annual campaign called Compassion in Crisis in May, and we asked some of our donors and sponsors who typically supported our summer fundraising event to ask them if they would support our campaign, because it was, our event was postponed. We heard nothing but yes. So we shared a young woman's experience with us. She became the face of our campaign. We targeted our donors through e-blasts, and I must say this was our first time in implementing an annual campaign since my joining the association. Through this process, we learned that our donor database is really the key to our success. More information in the system is better. We learned that we need to stay on top of our donor data, duplications in our system, etc. And as we are researching to move to a new donor database. Clean data is so important. We hold an annual home tour in November with 1,000 people shuffling around the city to see beautifully decorated homes. It's a very touchy type of event, people wanting to touch decorations, get close to displays, and we weren't sure how we were going to pull this off virtually. Our first step in the spring was to contact our sponsors to determine their level of support and really remain transparent with them that we weren't sure if we were going to be able to do this, but if we did do something, would we have their support to do it? We got nothing but yeses, and actually a lot of words of encouragement to just go for it. You know, we are known to do very large events and very successful events. So that added some extra pressure, but we found a way to be able to pull it off virtually. It was pre-recorded, so there was much of the tech side of things that we needed to learn. But what it allowed us to do is to create new relationships in our community. And it attracted people who would not normally want 1,000 people through their home, which is something that we are continuing to evaluate for 2021. Ticket prices were lower than normal. We had more people participating, but we had the highest donations this year compared to the last 2 years of doing this event. We normally hold a gala. We've been holding a gala in the last 12 years called Swinging with the Stars. It's taken from the TV show that we all know, Dancing with the Stars. We hold that normally in the winter. And we decided that we would take the 12 years of our community's involvement and success and take a retrospective look back at the last 12 years and celebrate everyone who's come on board with us. And our call to action is to make a donation. We really kind of wanted to leave this event in its form as we know it, and kind of leave it in its glitz and glam until we can actually do it in our normal way as we know it. So again, we really looked at our sponsors who have come on board with us. We did this in the spring, being very transparent, and we're not sure what we're going to do, if anything, but if we did something, would we have your support to do it? And I would say 80% of the sponsors who have been part of this event have come on again. As we know, when we do big gala events, there's a lot of in-kind support that also happens with that. So obviously there is some sponsorship that wouldn't come on board because we're not having to buy various things or to buy services. Digital marketing and social media will be our key platforms to help us generate donations through our retrospective. So we're actually doing a 30-day retrospective, which is has quite a longevity in terms of fundraising, but our digital sponsors is also creating something that our community as a whole can get behind to support our mental health, our well-being, to get up and dance and promote our community, just to get up in February, move around, submit your fun videos, and let's just take a look. Grant writing obviously became a big direction for us at the beginning, and we were able to write grants and be successful. And this is something that we will continue to transition our work moving forward post-COVID. Obviously, the federal government's wage subsidy has been a huge help. There were months that we did not qualify for, but with the extension to the end of June, it will actually be extremely helpful, as our revenue streams do tend to be lower in the first part of our fiscal year than the latter part of our fiscal year. When we prepared our annual budget for the year, we were really planning with a lot of unknowns. And when you start taking out special events expenses out of your budget, it can actually become quite a large number. So we took out $100,000 out of our expenses just by not holding the magnitude of our events this year. We looked at areas that we also needed to decrease in our expenses, but we knew some expenses were also added to our expenditures because of COVID, and we just continued to write small grants for a couple $1,000 here and there to support those costs. We've been extremely fortunate thus far. Our donations in general, apart from our Compassion in Crisis campaign, is 20% over last year's donations revenue. And we're not quite certain what's contributing to that, but I will say for ourselves, we knew that we couldn't stand still. Every charity or organization is doing something. We needed to stay at the forefront of it. We know that people still want to give, and it may not be at the level of their regular giving level, but they wanted to give something. We needed to ensure that we were still telling our story. So hospices, as we know, make such huge impact, and perhaps we're not at the same service delivery levels that we are used to because of the restrictions, but the level of our support is still extremely impactful. And so we wanted to make sure we were telling our stories, our volunteers were telling our stories and experiences, because our life cycle does happen outside of this COVID sort of situation. I think resilience was a huge piece for us as well. Continue just to be resilient. Fundraising looks different. Lessons learned through this pandemic for us, and it shifts in how we prepare our fundraising plan moving forward. We have learned that special events can no longer be a large revenue stream for us. We've been talking about making change to our fundraising efforts and building our fundraising team, which does include volunteers. And so we are making those shifts into looking at more of a donor development legacy gift focus. And the pandemic, I think, has really given us a needed push to create and review a new structure for us to move towards that direction. And I would say it's all about time and timing, and here we are. So I just want to say thank you to BCHPCA for having me today to share some of our wins and lessons learned through philanthropy through a pandemic. I'm still learning.
No, that was great. That was great, Natasha. Thank you for that. That's interesting when you say special events. Well, your hospice cannot only rely on special events, and that your donorship is up 20%, right? For the last 2 years, did you say? For the last 2 years?
The donations we received through our Homes for the Holidays is up over the last 2 years of us implementing this event, but donations as a whole, including our Compassion in Crisis campaign, is 20% up.
Wow, so that's good. That's great. And I really like the fact that you touched on resiliency, because obviously you're right, your team is definitely not standing still. So that's great. No, thank you very much for that. That was fantastic. Up next, we're gonna go on to one of the newbies of the group, which is not me, it's Amanda. Amanda McNally. She is the new ED over at Peace Arch Hospice. She has been in that role since October of this year. She comes with many years of experience in the non-for-profit sector as she joins the society. She worked at the Canadian Cancer Society for 10 years. And over her time at the Canadian Society, Amanda has worked in a variety of portfolios, including her peer support program and the annual giving program. So welcome, Amanda.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
You are loud and clear.
Okay, I'm just gonna get my screen shared. Okay, can you see my presentation?
Yep, you're good.
Excellent, okay. Thank you. Well, first of all, thanks for inviting us to participate. Again, I have only been in this role since October, so still diving in and trying to learn all there is to know and meet the incredible people that are a part of this organization. And we do have many that have shared the information that I'll be sharing with all of you today. Why is it not advancing? There we go. So like many of us here, we had significant impacts from COVID. We had to close our thrift store, which generates about 47% of our annual revenue. It was closed for about 2.5 months. We also closed our supportive care center, where all of our groups and counseling and different programming takes place. That was closed for approximately 2 months, with some minimal activities still happening. We had our counselors doing Zoom or phone call sessions with clients in need. And we had very bare minimum staff in the office just to check in on day-to-day items. We've had no volunteers in our hospice residence. And then 2 of our biggest in-person events, Hike for Hospice and Hospice Hoedown, were canceled this year, which led us with about a $70,000 loss of revenue. Reasons that we can celebrate, or ways we still continued forward. It was very exciting that as of May 25th, we opened our supportive care center again and have been able to host in-person sessions. Some people really prefer to meet in person, which is understandable given the nature of their sessions. We still offer phone call or Zoom as well if they'd like. We've been able to host some relaxation sessions depending on what stage of restrictions we've been in. Our thrift store reopened. We have tons of volunteers that have come back and allowed us to be able to keep that open and flourishing. And as of our last budget meeting, our thrift store is actually still on track to meet 90% of the projected budget prior to COVID. So incredible work happening at the thrift store. And one of the photos here you can see is just one of the ways the thrift store is working to generate income with the 12 days of Christmas. And then the one photo you can see with the kids, we were able to host one of our children's grief camps with masks and social distancing, and they all had just a wonderful, wonderful time. And of course, as we all know, during COVID, people really are looking for these connections when we're able to do so safely. More good news is we were actually able to still host our Celebrate a Life, which takes place at the local shopping center. It is essentially a booth setup where people are able to come over and write the name of a loved one on a paper dove and hang it on a Christmas tree in the mall. And if they make a donation, for donations over $20 or more, they are gifted with a wooden or ceramic dove that has been hand painted by local artists for them to take home and put on their very own tree in their home. So in the first 7 days of Celebrate a Life last week, we raised just over $5,000. So that is up from previous years, which is great, and hopefully it continues. So that runs from December 1st till the 23rd. We've also had our dedicated third-party events still to continue. One of the most successful ones we've had in the past has been similar to Natasha was speaking to. We have a third-party event called the Holiday Home Tour, which they decorate homes in the neighborhood, and people can go through and experience Christmas and be inspired for their own decorating. Of course, that couldn't happen this year due to COVID. And so they got really creative and decided to put together a magazine. So it was the Holiday Home Tour magazine, and they had local designers go into homes. They were photographed. They had tons of sponsorship. The person who took all the pictures was donating their time as well. And then they sold 1,000 of the magazines, or they've sold just under 900 actually. And so there's a picture there of 2 ladies holding the magazines. They sold for $50 each, and those proceeds will be split between us and the local breast health clinic. So that's great. That's coming in shortly. And then as Natasha mentioned as well, we've really taken full advantage of grants that have been available, as well as the leniency on how to spend the money and other restrictions around those to help ensure that we're able to still provide the services that we do free of charge. And then the last thing, this is brand new to our organization, and one of my first major tasks, undertakings, was launching a direct mail campaign. So we have a supporter that is in the mail industry, printing industry, and so she donated all of the printing, the envelopes, the paper. We had a writer who's actually my neighbor donate her time to do the writing for the direct mail piece. So we were able to launch this campaign at very little expense to us, which, as we know, donors are very, very cognizant of how their dollars are being spent. And so if you flood them with tons of things that they know will cost a great deal of money, it can be very off-putting. So we were able to launch this. We sent out over 7,000 mail pieces to our donors. We also had a family. So the woman you see there is Deborah Nedelak, and she passed away in hospice last November. Her family did some private fundraising, raised over $20,000, and have donated $20,000 to us in her memory, knowing that we would launch this direct mail campaign and ask our community to try and match that $20,000. So that went out last week, and we're already seeing very good results and lots of mail coming back. So fingers crossed it continues to be successful, and this family can see the impact of their donation and the legacy that they have created in Debbie's memory. And so that's sort of what we've had going on.
That's great. Thank you, Amanda. That was quite informative. I like the fact that you had a personal touch on your direct mail, and a family was able to fundraise and looking at matching the results. I think that's great. Yeah. Yeah,
I think it always has to be a storytelling piece. I think if you're just sending out soliciting, I'm just a really big advocate for storytelling, and she's well known in this community, which is why we went with putting her photo on the envelope as well as her name, because there are people that will see her and read her name, and that will be what prompts them to open the envelope.
Wow, that's great. No, thank you. That was fantastic. All right, thank you for sharing. So now we are up next. It's Donna. So Donna Flood, no, we have no idea who Donna is. So Donna is the executive director over at Prince George Hospice Society. She's been there for about 6 years. She's also the president of the association of completing her 3rd term, going to her 4th term. Donna is also a director at the national organization, the Canadian Hospice Palliative Care Association. And she also finds herself to be the fundraiser by necessity. So let's hear what Prince George has been doing.
Take myself off mute. Thanks, Pablita, for doing this for me. So I want to sort of talk about why we've managed to come through the COVID sort of in a good place. I think I'll go back to what Natasha was speaking about. Developing a fund development plan that is sustainable without necessarily having to rely on the fundraising events. So our strategic plan that we formed 3 years ago put sustainable funding as one of the key priorities for me to move forward with, to sort of diminish the need for those events. So one of the things I do is I'm very, very shameless in getting out and speaking to service industries and whoever in the community will have me to just sort of tell the story. And that's one of the things I encourage, other not-for-profits that come and ask us how we've managed to do so well, is tell the story. People really need to know the history of what you do and how it's relevant on our community. So next, Alita. And with that, statistics. People love to know exactly what the numbers are, exactly what the impact on the community. So again, shamelessly out in the community whenever I can to sort of let people know where they fit into the work that hospice does. So on to the next. So one of the first things I had done when I came into hospice was create Faces of Hospice. And these are a whole video series that speak to, again, staff, volunteers, and families that have been impacted by hospice, either why they support hospice, how hospice supported them, and the staff of why they work with us. And we utilize these videos everywhere. So whether I'm out speaking to service clubs or social media, so if we're doing a staff recruitment drive, we put our staff videos out there. If it's Father's Day, we put people who have maybe lost their fathers in hospice and they tell their stories. So we really utilize social media, both Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, to share that, so people sort of understand and get comfortable with hospice and being able to speak about hospice. So on to the next. And the other main thing that we do is we are clear and transparent with our finances about why we why we fundraise. A lot of people aren't, they either assume that we're 100% funded by the government, or what we do with the money that we raise. So I bring this slide with me everywhere so people can see, how much we need to fundraise from the community, either through donations or through our resale in our lotto. And right now we need to fundraise over 1.3 million a year. So we would need to be really strategic in that. So on to the next clip, Lita. So our non-fund development plan is, again, telling our story every chance we get, really, really strong media presence. We do Facebook every day. I'm very fortunate that I have a volunteer in the community that oversees my Facebook and continuously is managing it and putting out stories. We've worked really hard on developing our planned giving, which really provides us with significant donations that now come in regularly. Our resale store, which provides 16% of our funding, has been instrumental in providing the sustainability of what we do. And our lotto. We have a Dream Home Lotto, which I'll talk about as we go into the pandemic planning, but it is really the significant piece that secures our funding for us. The other thing we find really important is the return on investment of every fundraiser, how much you're spending and how much you're returning in. So with the pandemic, a lot of our events had to be canceled. So our Bucket List Gala, which is one of our signature galas, had to be canceled. We do have a color walk, which is similar to the Hike for Hospice. So we redesigned that and we engaged the community to get out and walk together as families and tell their stories, created a large social media event with it, and it raised $30,000 unexpectedly just from sort of redesigning what we do. Our High Tea for Hospice was canceled. Our Boogie with the Stars is similar to Kelowna's Swing. We are going to move forward with this, but we're going to be doing it differently. This is an event that we knew that we couldn't do on our own, so we've engaged other charities in town. So there's 4 charities that are all involved, and each charity has its own dancers. The dancers themselves are the ones that go out and raise the money, so it's third party. And this year we're going to have a live community event with the dancers, and where the money also gets raised is everyone votes for their favorite dancers, and we'll do that through text messaging. So we're excited to see how this whole totally new event is going to happen. Our general donations, though, unlike Kelowna, have decreased by 25%. But we've seen a 200% increase in our grants. Again, we've worked really hard in our grants. The resale store, we've seen some losses, but again, we're seeing this increased turnaround now as everyone in the community is decluttered and given all of their sellable items to us. So it's really actually, we've seen quite an upswing in that in the last month. But where we've really seen an increase is our lottery. We have the Dream Home Lottery, which for the first time sold out within 3 months. We have a regular 50/50 attached to that, which sold out. So that was 150,000 for us. So we added the second 50/50, which is just should be sold out by the end of the day today. So those are the initiatives that really sort of allowed us to maintain. So really the lottery and the resale shop and the grants and the bequeaths are the sustainable funding that have sort of been unchanged this year for us. Again, we always want to leave them with why hospice is so important. So just always letting them know why it's important to support the work we do. And like I said, we're very fortunate in Prince George that the lottery has really maintained our sustainability this year. So again, thank you. I do encourage you to go and check out our Faces of Hospice. I have one up here on the site because it really does sort of share the work we do, and I found them invaluable in, you know, sharing that story of hospice throughout our community. So thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You did send me the video. So what I will be doing is after the webinar, I'll be adding the video to the resource page of the webinar so that folks can also take a look at the video. And please feel free to definitely look at the Prince George website, because you guys also would have changed your website and formatting, which is also nice. So you know what? I know I lied and said we're going to wait, but there's two really good questions, and hopefully we can try to answer it quickly just before you, Wendy, because, sorry. It was Julie Chambers. She said, was the campaign addressed mail to your donors only or by postal code? So I think that's either for, sorry, Amanda?
Is that for the direct mail campaign, that question? Yes.
Yes.
So we actually had the letter done in 3 ways. One was to our donors. So some of the verbiage was a little bit different because we were asking them for their continued support, thanking them for their continued support and telling the story. There was a second letter that was done to the Netelac donors. So people who had donated to create that initial $20,000, they got the letter explaining what the $20,000 was coming to, and asking them to consider at the 1-year anniversary of her death to continue with the legacy and consider making an additional gift. And then the third one was a blank, as we call unaddressed mail or postal walk. So the first 2 letters went to addressed our donors and Netelac donors. And the third one is in an unaddressed envelope. I have one right here on my desk. So there's no window for address, and then you can create a postal walk within Canada Post, select different criteria, and then they deliver it for you, but it's not addressed to specific individuals.
Perfect. Thanks, Amanda, because we got 4 different inquiries around that same topic, so I just want to nip it in the butt real quick. Awesome. Well, that's great. Well, Donna, Maria was saying, wow, I had no idea that this is very inspiring for a very small community of 8,000 in Revelstoke. So yes, exactly. Because what is the population over there in Prince George?
We're 80,000, less than, or about 80,000, I would say.
Okay, awesome. All right. So thank you, Donna, for that. That was fantastic. Miss Wendy from Victoria Hospice, on to you. So Wendy is currently Victoria's Hospice Interim Director of Development, and she has spent the last 8 years overseeing Victoria Hospice's Busy Events program. Last year, they hosted 5 signature events, and thanks to some creative and fun new approaches, each of these events have continued with similar or newfound success in the world of COVID. I do know that Victoria Hospice is busy because I live on island. I live just a little bit off of Victoria proper at Metchosin, and my partner's like, is this one of the other hospices within the organization? I'm like, yeah, this is Victoria Hospice. So we definitely get things all the way in Metchosin from you guys. So Wendy, please go ahead.
I'll just share my screen and get started.
Yeah.
Okay, ready to go. So yeah, as mentioned, Victoria Hospice does have a very busy events program, although I see we're not alone in that across the province. And I'm certainly the first to admit that I know how much work events are to put on. But for Victoria Hospice, they have been an incredible source of new donor acquisition, which is just so critical to driving the continued success of any fundraising program. And they've also created invaluable opportunities for us to connect and talk with our community, as well as to re-engage and develop some really meaningful and important relationships with hospice families, which sometimes as the fundraising team, we've had, it's been a little more difficult to do, to reach out to those families with privacy and just sensitivity in that area. So those have really been some of the key goals of our hospice events. And this year's really provided a great opportunity to get creative, to try some new things with keeping those goals in mind. So I'm just going to share about two events this time, and hopefully I won't go over the 10 minutes, but one is our Teeny Tiny Garden Tour. And then I'll just touch briefly on what we did for our Hike for Hospice this year, since I know it's an event that is shared across the province. So the Teeny Tiny Garden Tour is quite a simple one-day event where each year we have about 12 garden owners in the community, different ones each year, who open up their backyards and their fantastic gardens in support of Victoria Hospice. As I said, it's a one-day self-guided event. Tickets are $25, and everyone just absolutely loves poking around people's backyards. So it's a really fun day. It's held in June every year, and you know, it was about probably around April, beginning of May, we realized that even though it was an outdoor event, it was still just going to be too difficult with the ever-changing situation to proceed as we normally did. The irony being, of course, that everyone's backyards were looking better than ever because people were spending so much time in their yards this spring. So we decided to have a go at our first virtual event. And we were really pleased with the success, so I'm happy to share. Essentially what we did is we just selected 4 of the gardens, and about 10 days before our launch date, we went out and videoed and interviewed each of the garden owners with some questions and had them tour us around their garden. Now we did have someone on staff who had some video editing skills, which was, of course, was very helpful. But that being said, we didn't have any fancy equipment. Some of the footage was even just taken with an iPhone. So it was pretty quick and easy. The videos were a great opportunity to engage in a meaningful way with these people in the community, and they certainly have become big advocates for us. You know, some of them had hospice ties and hospice experiences that they, you know, shared with us, which was really meaningful. And so essentially we uploaded the videos to Vimeo and we embedded them on a page on our website that had a specific URL. So on our original tour date of June 14th, we set that page to go live, and we invited everyone free of charge to come check out our virtual tour. So when they landed on our page, they were greeted with a welcome video that was hosted by Brittany King, who's a local weather host, and she, during the pandemic, had been actually broadcasting the weather from her own backyard. So that was quite a nice tie-in and was a really great way to create that partnership. And then they had, people were able to view each of the gardens, and each one had something totally different to offer. And each video was about 6 or 7 minutes in length. We also had some behind the scenes videos just because we had so much great footage. We did a Google virtual tour of our rooftop garden and embedded that on that page as well. And that was something I didn't know you could do. So you can actually do a virtual Google tour of any space, indoor or outdoor, and then it lives on Google, and you can sort of kind of like when you Google Drive through streets and stuff, you can literally sort of walk through the garden virtually. So that was a really great way to link the event back to hospice and talk about hospice programs and our lovely garden and how important that is for our patients and families. And so, as I said, the tour was sort of free of charge. And so we just asked people to, in lieu of buying a ticket to the garden tour this year, we asked them to either make a donation or buy a garden tour calendar, which was a new addition this year. And so we were really thrilled with the results. We did run the event from June 14th to July 31st. So that's one of the benefits of a virtual event, is really to be able to extend the time frame. And it really allowed us to promote the event and create a really great buzz around town. We got some really wonderful media pickup, and people were sharing it amongst friends and family. During that time frame, we had over 5,000 people visit that page on our website, which is absolutely amazing and such a neat way to engage people with what we do and provide, have them check out our website while they're there and see what other programs we offer. The top video was viewed more than 1,600 times, which is amazing. So our tour usually brings in about 600 participants, which is still amazing, but 1,600 is even better. And then we had a lot of people contribute to the tour, and 45% of those people were completely new donors to Victoria Hospice. So that was a really exciting number for us. And what was so neat is that in past years, we've always just sold the tickets from local garden stores and other retail locations. So it was really hard for us to actually capture the information of the participants who were out on the tour. And so because we were selling or donations were being made online through our own system or in the calendar sales as well, we were able to capture that information and follow up with them and thank them and invite them back next year, of course. And within that, we had 45% of the people just bought a calendar at $25, which was the same price point as our regular tour. 39% made a donation and did not buy a calendar, with an average donation of $121, which I really think speaks to that idea of when you, the difference between having an item at a price point or just allowing people to give what they feel good about. Oftentimes, people would donate a lot more. We also had 16% of people who purchased a calendar and made an additional donation, which was really great. And again, so this is something that we will for sure be including next year, is the opportunity to buy tickets online or make a donation to the event, because in the past we didn't really have a great way of capturing additional donations for the tour. We'd have out on the tour, we would have a table with hospice information, excuse me, and a donation box. But really it paled in comparison to what happened this year, and also opened it up to people who would like to just donate but don't have the time or have other commitments to, who don't have the time to spend a whole day out on the tour, or who simply want to support the cause. Now, I know that I feel like every fundraiser probably has heard or has their own horror story about calendar fundraisers, and having hundreds and thousands of calendars left over. This was our first time trying a calendar, and it was actually turned out to be an incredible success. We sold out our first run, and we did a reorder. And so the calendar has really been a great marketing tool. We were able to design, we had a volunteer on the garden tour who took photos. And so the garden tour calendar featured photos from previous tours. And, we had it designed, and so we were able to include hospice information in the calendar. We also had important Victoria Hospice dates put into the calendar. And of course, that's something that will live on people's walls all year round, which is great. It provided a really great way to recognize our event sponsors. So each month was sponsored by one of our sponsors, which they absolutely loved. One of our sponsors even purchased extra calendars that they gave out as gifts to their clients. And we had such a great positive response on the calendars. We did a reorder and used it as a stewardship piece for our Heritage Circle and Legacy donors. It just seemed to be the right item, and it was easy to mail, and was really enjoyed by that demographic. So it was a success. And we're really thrilled that we surpassed our fundraising goal. In a sense, it was really our most successful year ever of the tour. And next year, we'll certainly be incorporating some pieces of the virtual tour, regardless of, but hopefully we'll also be able to be out in the gardens, because there's nothing quite like being there in person, of course. And if anybody's interested, we've sort of buried the garden tour a bit on our website, but it is still available. So I've put up the link there, and it will take you to our garden tour calendar sales page. And then there's a link to check out the tour from there. And yeah, then I just wanted to share briefly what we did for our Hike for Hospice. I know many of you also had yours postponed or canceled. We decided to postpone ours until the fall. And at that time, it was, the social bubble was being very much promoted. So we ran it as a socially distanced event. We invited people to start their walk at our community sports center, which is a fairly new location for us. So it was really a great opportunity for us to link the event to our mission, our programs, and our bereavement services that happen out of the community sports center. At our Hike for Hospice, we always have a tree of remembrance, which is literally we usually have a dogwood tree that we lug out to the middle of the field and invite people to write messages or names of those they've lost and hang it on the tree. And so we wanted to keep that important piece of our event. So we just got a wall decal, which was pretty easy to put up, and people stopped by and wrote the name of a loved one and put it on the tree. And it was just really nice to have that central community feel that other people are participated in this event as well. And the tree was absolutely covered by the end. Our participation in that event was certainly down. Normally we get about 300 people who participate in Hike for Hospice, but we had over 100 people come by our community sports center, and the revenue was very similar to in past years. And I would say the number one win from Hike for Hospice this year was the increased opportunity to engage with hospice families who did stop by. We really were able to have meaningful conversations and really get to know them on a personal level, which we're so grateful for. And pictured here is Anna Wormel, who lost her son in March at hospice, and she participated with her family in Hike for Hospice. And then pictured below, that's Anna again with a picture of her and Tyler, and which was part of our Celebrate a Life social media campaign happening right now. So again, we're so grateful for those patient families, those hospice families, and for those who share their stories with us. Yeah. So thank you so much for the opportunity to share.
Thank you. That was great. That's interesting because you said for your Tie Eating Garden, what really caught my attention is that you were able to see who your donors were, because in the past it's been the community gardens that have collected the donorship, correct? And that you had a 45% increase in donors?
So normally we sell about 600 tickets, but those tickets are sold out of, Garden Works and,
right.
Different locations around town where they, simply sell the ticket and then send us a check for the money, but we're not actually collecting that donor information with permission
Right.
to contact them in the future.
Right. So now you're able to get that information, which is great in terms of having a base. And then you also said it increased by 45% of the new donors, or was it just the fact that you captivated the information?
Yeah, so of the total number of people who contributed by purchasing or making a donation, almost half of those people were completely new.
Oh, new. That's what it is. Wow. That's amazing. I like that idea. That's awesome. Oh, fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, Wendy, for that. So I know we're cutting it really close to the wire, but just wanting to know if you do have your questions, please put them in the Q&A in the chat, and I will be sure to read it out to the panelists. So garden tour is amazing. Thank you for planting seeds. I love that. Of things we might try here in Revelstoke. Yeah, awesome. Any other questions or comments? I do have one question from a participant that wasn't able to participate, but she wanted her question answered. And it was around the restrictions. So yes, COVID has obviously definitely limited the amount of interactions or fundraising capabilities that our hospices are able to have. But has any of your regional health restrictions added to that by any chance? And if so, how have you kind of mitigated through them?
Do you want to ask that again, Pavlita? I'm not sure what you mean.
Yeah, no worries. So the question was, I understand that COVID has reduced the amount of activities that we are able to hold, and that has also affected our chance of fundraising. But I'm just wondering, has any of the restrictions, the health restrictions from the health regions also implicated on your fundraising? I think what she meant is, has it also challenged you in the fundraising?
I think it goes back to pretty much all of us. Any of those sort of gala, any group gatherings, any of those sort of things obviously had to be either reimagined or canceled. All of us rely somewhat on those events, not only just for the fundraising component of it, but really they're huge in awareness. I forget who had said it. It's about bringing back people that support hospice or hospice families and just creating that awareness again. So we lose that as well. And I think that's where, you know, the social media has really sort of re-engaged the communities differently.
And I appreciate that, Donna, because we had a social media team on Tuesday present in terms of how do you use social media to retain or attract new donors. And exactly what I think, Amanda, you were talking about in terms of having a story. They definitely said when you're using social media, try to, you know, have a story, engage with your donors or expected donors with a story through social media. So it definitely is a channel for sure. That members and hospices can use.
I think too, and I learned this when I was in my previous role when COVID hit, and it applies here too, is that, you know, initially when COVID hit, I think many organizations halted. No one wanted to be the one asking people in difficult situations or who were losing their jobs and stressed and anxious to be asking them for money. And so many of us just stopped the ask, and we didn't know what to do, how to go forward. But I think what people slowly started to realize, and I'm a huge culprit of this, is that feeling of being powerless is really uncomfortable for a lot of people. And so for many people, it's important for them to give because it makes them feel like they're doing something, and it empowers them in a way that many of us have felt we've lost that during COVID. And so I think a big learning for me was that you still ask, and people still have the capacity and desire to give. It may look a little bit different for them, but it is important for so many people to continue to support if they can.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, no, I'm not quite sure if anybody else has any other questions, but really quickly through the panel, say like one word you would say that you this year has looked for you in terms of fundraising. You know, one word. Don't know if you can do it, but what comes to mind?
Creativity.
I'm going to steal Natasha's word. I'm going resiliency.
Yeah.
And Amanda, you said creativity? Yes.
Yeah, I think we've had to be really creative this year.
Natasha?
Yeah, I would say resiliency.
No, she stole yours, Natasha. You got to come up with
Well, thanks, Donna. You know, I would say evolve.
Yes. Yeah. Nice. Wendy?
Oh yeah, I think I'm gonna have to piggyback on Amanda's creativity. It's just, yeah, it's just been such a great opportunity to try something new, and you know, some of it's I'm so glad we did, and we're going to continue with some of it, and it's allowed us to refocus on the really important aspects of our events, anyways, in particular, and in everything we do, whether it's an appeal and the stories we write or social media.
Yeah, I will say.
I just want to.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Donna.
Sorry, I just want to add one thing is where we're very fortunate as a group and as a sector is how much communities appreciate and respect the work that we're doing, and it crosses all boundaries, all people, everyone that's out there, and it's because of the phenomenal work that hospice is so well respected right across the province.
I will agree. And I think from a provincial level, when I look at, you know, the membership and the information, and from the survey that we conducted in April, and that we are still, second one that we're conducting now, is I really find that the hospices, you guys have been agile and very fluid within your community. You've been able to respond to the needs in light of COVID, which I think is very unique to the hospice community. So no, that's fantastic. Awesome. Susan, Scott, Gabe, great presentation from across BC on pivoting fundraising endeavors during COVID. Yes, ma'am. So with that, if anybody, I don't know if anybody else has any questions, I would like to thank the panelists, and I would like to also thank the attendees for sticking with us for this 5 days of fundraising, lunch and learn expo. It has been very successful, a lot of engagement. After this, we will be sending a quick survey just to give us your feedback from yesterday and today's event as well. Please keep in mind, renewals are open for the association. I'm gonna put a plug in. Please ensure that members and even non-members renew your membership. This expo was in light of the survey that we have, and that our association felt that we needed to provide our members with a COVID relief program. And this is part of the relief program, this free luncheon expo. And we also have a 30% reduction for membership renewal for 2021 as well. So please let us know if we're here to help, and send us an email. And thank you very much for your time. Happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa, all the good stuff. And we will see you in 2021. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Pablita.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. Bye.